Hi, okay. Well, I'm out on my lunchtime bike ride down near the airport, so maybe a little bit background noise. It's a beautiful sunny day. The the sun is glittering off the beautiful deep blue sea, and really feels like spring has arrived. Everything's starting to bloom, although there's still snow on the mountains, not far away. Um, anyway, I thought I'd do some little bit of history, uh, my personal history, and how I got into this situation. So, if you cast your mind back to into the eons of history, um, some people may recall a period that we now refer to as the 80s. And in the late 80s, I was a young guy, and I did a road trip with a friend of mine, school friend, still in touch with him these days. And we drove right across Canada, and then right down the west coast of the US, and across the US to the northeast, to Boston, where we stayed a while and replenished funds, and then headed down to Florida. So all of that took 6 months. So I found myself just around Christmas back in the UK. I had no job. I didn't really have any money, and I'd been living in London before the bike trip. So I moved back to London, and after a while I got a job with a subcontractor for the MOD, and that was quite a good job I was doing. I was what they call a technical officer, so I was doing IT stuff, but a lot of it wasn't really so much IT as what do you call it? Lots of spreadsheets, lots of figures involved. We were calculating budgets for the MOD for the next 10 years, and had to sign the Official Secrets Act, and got into meetings on electronic warfare and on their communications, and anyway, that was quite good. And as I say, I wasn't a civil servant because I was working for a subcontractor who was actually based in Godalming in Surrey, and I used to do some of the work down in Surrey, and but mainly I was working just off Fleet Street in the city of London, which I loved, and everything is on your doorstep. And we used to go to the pub, the Old Chester Cheese, where Samuel Johnson used to drink, and it was rebuilt after the Great Fire of London, so it had been there before the Great Fire. Hell of a lot of history. So yeah, that was quite good, and I spent a few years there, and then I found myself moving to Greenwich, where I worked for Submarine Systems, who built the submarine cables that carry the internet all over the world. And Greenwich had a long history of building submarine cables, one of the oldest submarine cable manufacturing places. But I was doing data analysis. Again, it was an IT job. Did lots of stuff on data analysis and defect rates, and putting out. Whoop, there goes the plane. So I did that, but I got really pissed off with that job. I didn't like working out in Greenwich, and I didn't really enjoy I missed the buzz of the city of London. So I looked around for what was going freelance. I managed to get myself a freelance IT support role in Victoria, where I worked for the Mine Workers Pension Fund. In those days it was called CIN. I think it was later bought by Goldman Sachs. Unfortunately, I wasn't there when Goldman Sachs bought it, or that might have been quite lucrative. And I did that for another was it a year? I did 2 stints of that, separated by a trip to Australia and Thailand. And after that, I then landed a job at Lloyd's of London in the famous Richard Rogers building in the city, and that was on the Equitas project, which was the calculation of all of Lloyd's historic. This is Lloyd's, the insurer, not the bank. All the historic risk that Lloyd's was carrying from the 70s and 80s, and it was a massive project. And we built a database that all the Lloyd's syndicates had to put in the data, and then it was all going to be calculated, and they were going to take on this, take all this liability into a separate company. And so I was there for about a year and a half, and I was doing ridiculous hours, especially towards the end of the project when everything was there was a deadline. And I did do a couple of times, I did do through the night. So I got to work at 9 in the morning, and I left the following day about 5 in the evening, literally working in the Lloyd's building. We'd stop at about 9, and somebody'd order a load of curry from Brick Lane, and a minicab would bring it round, and there was a big team of us, all youngish guys, quite a few Aussies and a couple of South Africans, and I still know a couple of those guys these days. So that was good fun. And then I left there at the end of my contract in, when was that? 96, and I went on a bike trip with a mate all around Europe, a motorcycle trip, which was a month. So maybe that's the subject of another little talk. So I came back to London, and I got another contract at Lloyd's of London, but this time in the building across the street. So I was there for a while, doing access and database work and that sort of stuff. That was pretty good, and it was pretty well paid. I wasn't doing the hours that I'd been doing before, the silly hours. It was good money, but it was crazy sometimes coming home at 4 in the morning. Anyway, so after that I went to a small software outfit in Hammersmith for a brief period. That was a little bit of a cowboy operation, and I was sort of glad to get out of that place. And then I went to Daiwa Securities, which is a large Japanese bank, and I was working right in the middle of the city, just a few hundred yards from the Bank of England, and I did quite a lot of different projects there, mostly Excel VBA and some Access stuff as well, and other downloads from the larger databases, DB2 and stuff like that. And for a while in that contract, they moved me down to the trading floor. So I was actually on the bond trading floor at Daiwa. I wasn't in the IT department anymore because I had to look after and develop a system that a guy had been developing and then left. And it was really hard work. It was stressful. You had the head of global bond trading sometimes standing over my desk asking me where such and such a report was, and I was coming in at weekends to get the work done. It's quite strange being on a trading desk at the weekend. You're the only person there. All the Bloomberg screens are still sort of chattering away, but anyway, I quite enjoyed the time on the trading floor, and I was always interested in the financial markets anyway, and so that was quite an interesting time. And then I moved to Merrill Lynch, the US broker, and again in the City of London, and again that was in the run up to the introduction of the euro. I had quite a central role in that because I looked after a database that was on bond options, and every financial instrument that they traded had to be had to be converted from the legacy currencies, the French francs, the Deutschmarks, the Italian lira, into the euro, and it all had to be done over one weekend. So we had a few dry runs at that, but it all worked out in the end, and it was good for overtime as well. So I was at Merrill's, and then in I think it was 99, I got a contract through a mate from my Lloyd's days at Deutsche Bank. So I was at Deutsche Bank, and that took me into the into mid 2000, I think.